I never imagined it would come to this. That one day I'd be sitting alone in a quiet room where the curtains never move and the silence doesn't speak. Not because I was angry or bitter, but because I finally had nothing left to see. My name is Henry Callahan, and I'm blind. But that's not what this story is about. This story is about how blindness opened my eyes, not to the world, but to the truth about family, love, and sacrifice. This is a story about the son who turned his back on me, the grandson who reminded me what real love looks like, and the price I paid in secret to give someone else the life I no longer needed. The darkness didn't come all at once. At first, I thought it was just the lights in the kitchen flickering. Then the headlines in the paper started to blur. Street signs got harder to read. Faces became shadows. And eventually, there was nothing left but a dim, cloudy haze, like fog behind my eyes. The doctors called it optic nerve atrophy. They said it was irreversible, that I should prepare to lose my sight completely over the next couple of years. I didn't panic. I didn't scream. I'd been through worse. I was a factory man for 42 years, raised 2 kids on a single salary, buried my wife before I turned 60. I thought I'd handled it all just fine. But what I didn't expect was that the people I loved the most would turn away the moment I couldn't see them anymore. Daniel, my oldest, had always been the golden boy. Smart, smooth-talking, charming. He got the scholarship. He got the corner office. He got the big house with the fancy doorbell that plays Beethoven. And he got this idea in his head that weakness was shameful. So when I told him about my eyes, his response was short. "Dad, you're not seriously going to keep living alone, are you? Not, how can I help? Not, do you want to stay with us for a while? Just disbelief, discomfort." Then came Melissa, my daughter. Softer than Daniel, but also more distant. Married, 2 kids, PTA meetings and yoga classes. Always too busy to visit. "Maybe we could find you a good facility," she said once over the phone. "You know, somewhere with trained staff, safe and quiet." That was her way of saying, "You're not our responsibility anymore." It was a rainy Tuesday when they came over together, Daniel and Melissa, sitting stiff on my couch, like 2 lawyers delivering bad news to a client. "Dad," Daniel started, clearing his throat. "We've been talking." My cane was leaning against the wall. I could feel their hesitation through the silence. "We think it's time you moved, somewhere with better care." I asked, "You mean a nursing home?" Melissa chimed in. "Not a nursing home exactly. It's more like assisted living." I smiled politely. "Does it matter what name you put on the door if the lock still turns from the outside?" They didn't laugh. They didn't argue. They'd already made the arrangements. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a handoff. Daniel walked me into the building, hand on my elbow like a chauffeur delivering a package. He didn't describe the place, didn't tell me what my room looked like. He just said, "They'll take good care of you here, Dad." Then silence. Footsteps fading, a door shutting, and I was alone. The room was small. I counted the steps from wall to wall, 10 across, 7 back. 1 bed, 1 chair, 1 narrow window I couldn't see. A television I couldn't watch. A calendar I couldn't read. The staff was kind, but distant, like people paid to pretend they care. Breakfast at 7, medication at 9, lunch at noon. Dinner at 5, every day like a page copied over and over again until the ink starts to fade. I wasn't angry, just empty. I told myself, this is just another chapter. This is where old men go to finish their stories. But mine wasn't over. Not yet. One afternoon, as the wind scratched against the window and I was drifting in and out of a nap, I heard a voice at the door. "Grandpa?" It was like light in a dark tunnel. I turned toward the sound. "Adam?" I said, unsure if my ears were playing tricks. "Yeah," he said. "It's me." Adam, Daniel's son, 18. Tall, quiet. He used to sit with me on the porch when he was little, asking about the stars. Now here he was, a man in his own right, sitting in a chair beside my bed. "How'd you find me?" I asked. Dad mentioned it. By accident, really. He visited for hours. Talked about school, his friends, his plans to study environmental science. "I didn't want to let them leave you here without saying anything," he said. Those words stuck with me. They filled a space that had been hollow for months. Adam came back. Not once. Not twice, but every week. He brought audiobooks. He helped me learn to use a voice-assisted phone. He described movies in vivid detail, so vividly that I could almost see them again in my mind. The nurses began calling him the Bright One. He never came for long, but his presence lingered even after he left. I told him stories about his father, the good ones, the embarrassing ones. I didn't poison his view. He could make his own judgments. And he did, quietly, gently. "You know," he said once, "you've got better vision than most people with perfect eyes." I chuckled. "That's because I look with my heart now." 3 weeks passed. No calls, no visits. I asked the staff if they'd heard anything. Finally, the nurse, Janet, pulled up a chair beside me. "Mr. Callahan, your grandson's in the hospital." My chest tightened. What happened? "His kidneys. They failed. It's serious." I gripped the arms of my chair. "Is he?" "Alive, but barely. He's on dialysis. They're looking for a donor." I sat in stunned silence. Then I asked the only question that mattered. "How do I get tested?" The doctor frowned. "Mr. Callahan, you're 75, you're blind, you're not a viable donor." I pushed back. "Test me anyway. I don't care what your chart says." Janet, the nurse, took pity. She scheduled the screening, quietly, privately. And days later, the results came back. A perfect match. A 75-year-old blind man with failing knees and a tired heart was a perfect match for his grandson. I felt something swell in my chest. Hope. Purpose. I signed the paperwork, agreed to anonymity. The doctors warned me. "The risks are higher for you. Surgery at your age is—" "I'm not afraid," I said. "I've already lived my life. Let him live his." They scheduled the procedure in 3 days. I didn't tell Daniel, didn't tell Melissa, didn't tell Adam. This was between me and God. The night before the surgery, I sat awake in bed. I couldn't see the stars anymore, but I remembered what they looked like. I remembered Adam asking me, years ago, "Grandpa, do stars die?" And I had answered, "Sometimes. But when they do, they shine the brightest right before they go out." I hoped I'd shine too. The surgery took 6 hours. I don't remember the pain. I remember waking up to the sound of monitors, nurses speaking in hushed tones. I felt the bandages, the weakness, the fog of anesthesia. But inside I felt peace. They wheeled me back to the nursing home 2 days later. No fanfare, no flowers, just a quiet return. The staff had orders to maintain confidentiality. No one would know what I had done, just as I wanted. They offered me praise. I refused. "You're a hero, Mr. Callahan," one nurse said. "No," I replied. "I'm a grandfather." Time passed. Whispers drifted in from the outside world. Adam was healing. The new kidney was taking. His strength was returning. And still, no one knew. Daniel posted online, "A miracle donor saved my son. We may never know who they were, but we're forever grateful." I read that message through a text-to-speech program, and I smiled. Gratitude from a man who had once called me a burden. Funny how life works. A month later, Adam visited again. Still weak, but standing. Alive. He sat beside me, his hand covering mine. "They said the donor wanted to remain anonymous," he said slowly. "I know," I answered, "but I need to know who it was." I said nothing. He continued, "It was a perfect match. That narrows it down. I asked my parents, my uncles, my cousins. No one matched." "Maybe it was a stranger," I offered softly. "Maybe," he whispered, "but I don't think so." He stood, kissed my forehead. "I'm going to find out." Adam became obsessed. He requested records, traced timelines, spoke to the transplant coordinator. He even tracked nurse shift schedules. One night he visited again, his voice shaking. "Grandpa, were you at the hospital on March 12th? I paused. "Why?" "Because I saw your name in the appointment log. You went in for labs. That's the same day they drew blood for my donor screening." My silence said everything. He exhaled hard, like someone who had just reached the summit of a mountain he wasn't sure he could climb. "It was you, wasn't it?" I nodded. Just once. He fell to his knees, hands on my lap, tears dripping onto the fabric of my old flannel shirt. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't do it to be thanked," I said. "I did it so you could live. You could have died, Grandpa. Then I would have died with purpose." He wept, and I held him, the boy who reminded me what love really looks like. 2 days later, Daniel came. Not called, not texted. He just appeared. The staff at the home were startled to see him. The son who had signed all the paperwork, but had never once looked back. I recognized his footsteps. Heavy, hesitant. He stood in the doorway for a long while before saying a word. "Dad." I slowly turned my head. My hands were folded in my lap. "Is it true?" The question hung in the air like fog. I didn't ask what he meant. We both knew. I waited. "Was it you?" I still didn't answer. Some things don't need confirmation. But after a long pause, I nodded once. Daniel let out a breath that sounded like a man collapsing inward. He stepped forward and sat down across from me. For the first time in many years, I heard the crack in his voice, not from arrogance or anger, but from shame. "Why?" A single word, but it carried decades of weight, decades of distance. "Because he needed it," I said simply. "But you could have died. You're old, you're blind, I'm his grandfather," I interrupted. That's all that matters." He didn't respond right away. I heard the creak of his chair as he leaned forward, elbows on knees. "I thought I was protecting you," he said eventually. "When we moved you here, I thought this place would be better, safer." I gave a soft laugh. "You were protecting yourself, Daniel, not me. You didn't know how to handle a blind man who used to be stronger than you." He didn't deny it. That was new. "I didn't think you still cared. Not after everything." "I never stopped. Even when you did. Even when you left." He dropped his head into his hands. The silence that followed was long, but it wasn't empty. It was full of truth. Later that evening, he returned with Melissa. I hadn't seen them together in years. She looked nervous, guilty. Her voice shook when she said hello. "Dad, we owe you more than we can ever repay." I didn't say anything. I let them speak. "We made excuses," she continued. "We acted like you were too much to handle. But really we were ashamed of our own weakness." Daniel added, "We tried to move on without you, but you were always there. Even blind, you saw more than we ever did." Their words were water on a long, dry soil. I didn't need apology. I needed recognition. And at last, it came. They asked me to come home, not out of guilt, but out of something better. Understanding. They arranged everything. The downstairs room was renovated with care. Voice-assisted lights, audio bookshelves, padded floors, no sharp corners. It was beautiful, they said. I never saw it. But I believed them. When I walked through the door, guided by Adam's steady arm, I felt something shift. The house was no longer unfamiliar. It was mine again. Not because of the walls or the furniture, but because of the people inside. That first dinner was quiet, but warm. I could hear the laughter return to their voices, the clinking of glasses, the comfort of presence. For the first time in years, we were all at the same table. Daniel began visiting my room every night. Not long conversations, but honest ones. He told me about work, about his regrets, about how he felt when he found out about the surgery. He even asked for advice again. That broke me a little inside. "What would you do if you were me?" I replied. "I'd try to become the man my son once pretended I was." He nodded. No argument, just acceptance. Melissa started reading to me again. Books from my youth. She'd pause sometimes to cry. I never asked why. I knew. Adam grew bolder, stronger. His health returned quickly, and with it came purpose. He joined the hospital volunteer staff. He began studying biology with new fire. "I want to help others the way you helped me," he said. I smiled. "Then do it with humility, not for applause." He recorded our conversations, said he wanted to make a podcast, called it Conversations with the Man Who Sees Without Sight. It took off. People listened. They wrote letters, sent messages. "Your story helped me forgive my father. Your words helped me reconnect with my grandfather. You gave me courage. I cried more in those months than I had in a decade. Not out of sadness, but out of unexpected joy." On my 76th birthday, they held a small gathering. Nothing grand, just the family, some neighbors, a few of the nurses who had become like friends. Adam stood up to speak. "This man saved my life. Not just with his kidney, but with his heart. He taught me that family isn't who shows up when it's convenient, but who stays even when he's left behind. He knelt beside me. I hope one day I can be half the man you are. And in that moment, I realized something. I had lived long enough to become the foundation my family rebuilt itself upon. Not by force, not by demand, but by silent, steady, unwavering love. I was once called a burden, an old man with no sight. But today, I am a lighthouse. Not because I shine the brightest, but because I stayed standing when the storm came. I gave away a piece of myself, expecting nothing, and in return, I received more than I ever dared to ask for. A son's redemption, a daughter's voice, a grandson's legacy. Love doesn't ask to be seen. It only asks to be remembered. And I'm telling you this story so you remember too.